Hey y'all, hope you're doing well. It's been a little while since we've done a hack sesh, so it's time to dust this off and let's play around a little bit today. Um, I wanted to spend some time looking at Omni. So if you haven't heard, Omni is our new SaaS slash on-prem offering that is currently in a private beta and is getting ever closer to being public beta and GA. So I figured today is as good a day as any to take a little deep dive and play around and show you guys what it looks like. Um, First things first, this is the Omni doc. So it's omni.siderolabs.com. This is our doc site that gives you kind of the nitty gritty about joining machines to Omni and all that fun stuff. But first, we should probably talk about what is Omni. Omni is basically a centralized management plane for your Talos and Kubernetes nodes and clusters. And it makes it super duper easy to join machines, as you'll see, create clusters and maintain those clusters over time. And it includes a whole bunch of the really awesome things about Talos Linux as part of that, right? Like Kubernetes upgrades and all that fun stuff. So we're gonna see all that stuff today. If you want, if you want to sign up for the private beta and get on the list get on the list and all that fun stuff. The URL for that is siderolabs.com. Oh, good grief. /Omni. And that'll take you to kind of our more marketing focused page that gives some basics about Omni. You can see my ugly mug in there introducing it. And then at the bottom, if you want to try Omni, there's a nice form to fill out. Fill out the form, and I'll spin you up an Omni account, and we can get started playing around. Yeah, so just kind of keep in the back of your mind, the doc site's here. When you sign up for Omni, this will tell you how to do all the fun stuff as far as joining machines and running on-prem if that's something you're interested in and all that. Cool. So let's see Omni. I'm going to log out actually first. This is my Omni instance. When you first log in, you'll be greeted with, an auth page. Right now, we support login with kind of Google or GitHub. We'll be adding like SAML, of course, for kind of bigger shops and things like that. So we are adding more as we go forward, but we've got these two right now. So I'll auth with Google, and I've kind of already went through this flow, so that immediately pulls in my Sidero Labs email, which is good. And then I am good to go. I'm logged in. Yeah, so this is Omni. This is the overview page. It's not a ton to see here because there's not a whole lot going on yet. But this is where you can see kind of number of clusters, number of machines, recent clusters, that kind of stuff. It's also a convenient place to go grab TeleCTL and Omni CTL. We will have Omni CTL. Well, we do have, and we will be continuing to improve Omni CTL so that you'll be able to use the CLI or programmatically create clusters and things like that against Omni. So just keep a heads up for all that stuff coming down the pipe. The interesting bit here in this overview page is probably these three items: the API endpoint, the WireGuard endpoint, and the join token. So these make up the information necessary for a Talos node to check in with Omni. So what happens is if I go download an installation media over here, so say I go pull the ISO down, which I don't need to because I've already got it downloaded, but if I say download, what's actually happening right now, it's spinning a little bit, and what's happening is it's actually doing a Docker, it's using Docker in the backend to generate an ISO on the fly, a Talos ISO. And it's baking in that info, these API endpoints and the WireGuard endpoint and stuff. It's baking that info in to the ISO so that it's pre-configured, and all you have to do is boot it, and Talos picks those up and says, oh, I'm supposed to go talk to Omni, and it knows where to go. It will make that connection, and then the two will form a point-to-point WireGuard link. And what's really nice about that is logs start flowing immediately once the link is formed. So you start seeing logs really quick. You can get really early visibility into what's going on with the Talos node. And it's just, I mean, it's just really cool stuff. So that's downloading the ISO. Once you download the ISO, it's now time to actually boot some machines. So what we're going to do, I think, today is, I think we're going to do a little Franken cluster. So I think we're going to go full cube span and do a hybrid cluster between, if I look at the machines tab, I had forgotten that I had this Raspberry Pi joined over here that I had kind of forgotten about, that's sitting kind of behind me here on the shelf. So I've got that guy joined in already. We're going to use it. And then we're going to add a few other nodes we're going to add a few control plane nodes from vulture.com. And then we'll probably do another, maybe a VirtualBox node or something locally. Just to kind of show that QSpan is amazing, and you can really run nodes from anywhere and have a truly hybrid Kubernetes cluster, which is very cool. So anyway, in Vulture, what I'm going to do is I've actually already uploaded the ISO. So I downloaded the ISO that you guys saw a second ago. I've uploaded it into Vulture. The process for doing that is basically you host it somewhere in a remote URL and you give them the URL and they go pull it. So I actually pushed it into their own object storage and then gave them their own URL to add that ISO. But if you've not used vulture.com, it's very cool. It scratches a lot of that same DigitalOcean type of itch for me. So it's super easy to use. You come in, it's affordable. There's not an absolute buttload of like just junk. It's a few things that make a lot of sense, and you just come in and you use it and you go. And it's really nice. I really enjoy the experience. Also, Talos is now in the Vulture marketplace. So if you did want to, we're not going to today. We're going to use our custom ISO. But if you did want to deploy a bare Talos VM, the way you would do that is you just come in here to operating systems. Marketplace apps, and then you search for Talos, and then Talos Linux is there, and it just works, and it's very cool. But what we're going to do is we're going to use our custom ISO that we uploaded. So I'm going to go through this process kind of quick. But you say, I want to use this uploaded ISO. I'm going to pick a 4 CPU, 8 gig box, no backups. And then I'm going to give this a kind of halfway friendly name and deploy that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 3 of those. One for each control plane. We're going to use this as our control plane. So bear with me real quick. We'll get those added. I'll be kind of quick about it. I see now that I'm on my last one, of course, that they do have a quantities at the bottom. I could have made this really easy on myself, but where's the fun in that, I guess. Okay, so last one. Okay, so, all right, we're good. I actually left backups enabled on that one, which I didn't mean to do, but oh well. I'll come turn these off in a second. These 3 are spinning up. 2 of them are probably already joined, the first 2. Yeah, you can kind of see they're in this unknown state to start, which means like the connection's been made, but we don't quite have enough data yet. But what you can see is that quickly fills out some basic hardware information about what we gather from that box, like that point-to-point connection. We say like, hey, send me what kind of hardware we're running on and things like that. And there's that third node out there too coming online. So we do gather some basic info. We're gonna spend some time soon really getting better about server labeling and making this a little easier to grok and a little easier to kind of auto select servers and server classes if you've used Sidero Metal, things like that. Those will be making their way into Omni as well, of course. So yeah, all my nodes are connected now. then it's time to make our cluster. So I think what we're going to do, to just real quick, in explaining where we're going, we're going to do 3 nodes, control plane and vulture, a single worker, that Raspberry Pi for now. And then I think from there we'll go and add a node, which will be our VirtualBox VM. So I'll show you the process of adding nodes and how easy that is. So yeah, we'll keep going. Let's see. So let's create a cluster. Let's call it Franken cluster. And you can pick the Talos image version you want. It will actually perform like an upgrade, as it'll like kind of install it. And then you can select the Kubernetes version you want to. I'm gonna pick the latest 125, and then we'll probably upgrade that too. I'll show you guys kind of all of it. This is a deep dive after all. And then I'll say for the control planes, I want these cats that I know are my vulture nodes, and then my 1 worker node that I know is the Raspberry Pi. That Raspberry Pi is also, it's this very cool little On Logic is the brand box, that has an SSD built in. So I'm going to select that SSD to install to. And then let's do some config patching. So if you've used Talos Linux before, you already probably know about config patches, but config patches are basically these little merge patches that overwrite parts of the Talos machine config. So all of Talos's configuration is in one big machine config file. And these config patches allow you to kind of override a small part of it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to turn on kubespan basically. So the way we do that is machine network, kubespan, enabled, true, not ter, oh good grief. And so that turns on kubespan. That's all that's required. And for those who haven't used kubespan, it is basically built-in WireGuard tunneling into Talos Linux. So what that means is that if I enable this across all these nodes, they go and form a WireGuard mesh internal to the cluster, into the nodes themselves. And that allows you to do a truly hybrid Kubernetes cluster. So it's very awesome. So yeah, so that's kubespan enabled. That's all you need to patch that in. And you'll see that this is a cluster patch. So that means that every node in the cluster will receive this config patch. We also offer like control plane patches and worker patches. So like you would use these, like you would use a control plane patch, for example, if you wanted to tweak like API server values, API server flags or something, add extra args to that. Like that's a control plane only patch because it's irrelevant for workers. So we allow you the ability to split those up. And then also if you're in this kind of machines view, and you can do it from the machines tab too, you can actually do node specific patching too. So like I could come in here and add something for my Raspberry Pi. Like if I wanted to, geez, I don't know, add extra node labels, tell the kubelet to add extra node labels after it gets, joins the Kubernetes cluster or something. That's the kind of thing I could do that got this very specific, for this machine specifically or something. So yeah, that's it. And that's config patching. We're ready to create our cluster, I think. Let's give it a go. So that's going to take you to this like kind of cluster overview page. But one thing I mentioned and didn't show is the logs. So that point-to-point WireGuard connection makes it such that you can get the logs back really early. So all I have to do is click on this machine and I can see actually the Talos logs flowing over that, over what we call Sidero link. And I can see that it is basically installing Talos, and did a kexec, and bringing up WireGuard and kubespan and all that fun stuff. So hopefully we will be off to the races here pretty soon. Let's take a look at the cluster. Yeah, so these are still booting, but what we can do in the meantime is we'll go ahead and download our kubeconfig. And to talk a little bit about the kubeconfig actually is worth doing. So these are actually starting to come online. But let's downloads. Good grief, I can't type today. Franken cluster. So this kube config is actually pre-configured like to use Omni as its endpoint for logging in, right? So if you've used like Dex or something like that before, it's kind of the same idea, but you do need like the kubectl OIDC. I think it's OIDC login, I think is the name of the plugin, but you do need a kubectl plugin for this, but it will go through Omni to talk to Kubernetes. And that is amazing because what it buys you is the ability to control all the access to your Kubernetes clusters through one central place, and that one central place is Omni. So you don't get yourself into the situation of, you know, I've given out a bunch of admin kube configs and oh crap, someone is leaving the company. Well, what do we do, right? Anybody that accesses the cluster does it over Omni, and that is controlled by the administrators of your Omni instance. So that means that like, and we're still building out some of this, of course, but full user management will be a part of this, right? So you can give access to specific clusters, and we'll have RBAC and all that fun stuff as well, so that you can really tightly control kind of who has access to what. And I hope my mic is not picking up the crying baby in the background. If so, I apologize. Hopefully he'll settle down here in a second. So yeah, so Kubernetes is up and running here. And the way we talk to it is we basically just say kubectl kubeconfig is that downloads Franken cluster, and then we'll get some nodes. And then again, that will bring up, and I'm glad I had that open actually, because that will bring up in the browser the same like kind of grant access flow to make you auth through Omni as part of that. So yeah, so that's it. I mean, we created a cluster across 2 different places pretty quickly there. And you can see that these are, you know, there's my Raspberry Pi worker, and then my 3 control plane nodes. So let's add a node, and then we'll, yeah, let's add a node. That'll be fun. VirtualBox, I guess, is what we'll use. I'm going to delete this old one because I know that's what I've used it for exactly this reason. Create a new one. We'll call it bbox worker 0. And we'll, why is that Oracle? Get out of here. We'll give it 4096. Yeah, small's fine. And then we'll tweak a couple of extra settings here just to give it a little bit of room. Give that a few CPUs to use. And then the one last thing I am going to do is bridge that network connection just so it gets its own IP on my network. And it's not like, you know, not having the chance to get confused about natting and all that fun stuff. Oh, helps if we actually add the ISO too. So let me do that. Choosing a disk file, and then let's go by modified date. Let's see. Okay, there's our guy. And then we say okay, and we'll start this up. And so as soon as it gets network, like if you've seen Talos come online before, it's all controller based. So like it may come online and networking may not quite be there yet. And so it may look scary for a hot second, but as soon as network comes online, you'll see a bunch of like this unary stream stuff. And that's actually like, that's the back and forth over between Omni and the Talos node itself. So it should now be in our machines list. And it is. So I can see we've got to do a little bit better about detecting stuff from VirtualBox VMs. But yeah, I can see this is my box. So now if I'm in my clusters view and I want to add a node, I only have one to choose from, but I can add my worker. select my install disk, but there's only one. And then add that node. And then I can see over here on the left, I see that it starts going through the process of pulling down the installer. And then it will install Talos to disk. It'll do a reboot, a kexec, really, hopefully, most of the time. And then come right up and establish connection to the rest of the cluster. So if we watch this for a second, it should come online pretty quick. Yeah, there it goes. So Cubelet's starting to come up now, so it should be here shortly. There it goes. Cool. And so that node is now online. And that's it. I mean, that's creating a cluster with Omni. It's crazy easy. And yeah, I mean, and again, this is a fully hybrid cluster, right? So like this is control plane and vulture, two distinct workers, both on my network right now, but this could easily be a third location too. It doesn't really matter. We've actually seen some pretty interesting stuff. Folks wanting to do like, you know, single node clusters at the edge and using Omni, like, and I say at the edge, but I mean like edge where they still have some upstream connectivity over like LTE or something like that. Like we've seen some folks using Omni for that use case, which has been really nice, because you can just basically flash the box and then ship it out to the field and power it on, and then it will kind of just talk back to Omni, and then you provision it. You kind of cram down your configs once it's online, as opposed to having to like bake an image per remote node kind of thing. So that's really cool. We've seen some people wanting to do, you know, more edge. We've seen a lot of really interesting edge usage is kind of what's on the top of my mind, I guess. But especially with QSpan and wanting to run like their control plane in the cloud, and then have these edge workers that, you know, are talking back to that control plane, and that all works fine. It's just very cool. And so that's it. I mean, that's Omni. And then from here, you know, here's the pods that are running. You get some very basic Kubernetes info out of it. And yeah, I mean, it makes it really stupid simple to create a cluster, and add and remove nodes and things like that over time. You know, this is obviously still a private beta, and a bunch of new features are going to come really quickly within the next days or weeks, like things like user management, handling all, you know, being able to have an administrator for your Omni instance that handles all of the user management, adding and removing users and things like that we're actively working on. That's all coming soon. And then, you know, of course, like the actual management of the cluster itself, you know, changing versions of things over time, all that stuff's coming too. And so yeah, and that's it. And so I hope that you thought this was interesting. I hope this is a good intro kind of into Omni and actually using it hands-on. And just remember that I think too, this will be a SaaS offering where you could pay a monthly fee, or it could be an on-prem license model. And we have varying tiers, of course, for that too. So like all the way down to like a hobbyist tier, where, you know, I think it's like $20 a month. If you want to have an Omni in the SaaS, you know, a SaaS version of Omni, and then, you know, you use it for kind of your home lab type of a scenario, and it works really well. So yeah, I mean, that's it. I hope you guys found this interesting. If you do have questions, please feel free to either email me. My email is on the screen now. Or hop on our Slack. That's the best way to get a quick response for sure. But hop on our Slack, ping me, There's an Omni channel out there, even if you want to ask some general Omni questions. Perfect. But yeah, take care of yourselves. Hope everybody has, well, I'm going to say have a good weekend, but who knows when you're going to watch this. But have a good next weekend. Take care. Thanks.